Good morning, guys. Am I audible to all of you?
Morning. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So basically today we are going to start our entity framework database first approach, right? So out of the three approaches, it is one of the approach, and the other two approaches are model first approach and code first approach. So from today and in our few upcoming articles, we will keep focus on this database first approach, right? We will understand what is database first approach, when to use database first approach, what are the functionality features provided by database first approach. Everything we are going to discuss in depth to right. So before starting, let us first understand what is database first approach. We have already discussed in our last session yesterday which approach to use at what scenario, right? So database first approach means if your database is already existing, right? Based on the database, if you want to create your model classes, right, then you need to go with database first approach. Or other sense, if you are developing one data centric application side where you are going to do heavy operations on the database side, right? And you are going to modify the database frequently, right? You need to add some tables, you need to update some tables, you need to add some indexing, right? This kind of functionality you are going to do regularly, right? Then it is always a good suggest. It is always a good approach to go with database first approach. So, what exactly database first approach means? The entity framework. What is entity framework? It is an ORM. What is the role of ORM tool? Now, based on the database tables, it is going to create the related classes, or based on the related classes, it is going to create the database tables. And in this case, right, in this case means in the entity framework case, so what exactly it is going to do? It is going to create the model classes, right, based on the database, right? Model classes in the sense it is going to include the model entities, model classes, right? And it is going to create the DbContext class, right? Within the, it is going to create, right, functions, right? So basically here you need to understand a few things, right? In the database, you might be have tables, you might be have some views, right? You might be have some functions, right? You might be have some stored procedures, right? So in the database side. And what exactly table content? Table contents are columns. What is view content? View also contains some columns, right? Function means it's you can say some statements, right? Some statements. Stored procedure means it is also going to contain some statements. These are the things the database contains, right? And based on these things, what exactly the entity framework will do in the case of, so we are talking about the DB first approach, right? We are talking about the database first approach. In the case of a database first approach, based the tables is there, the views is there, functions is are there, stored procedures are there. Based on the table, the entity framework, right, will create the model classes. Model classes. Within the classes, what you will find a property. What, how many number of properties, what type of properties, right? That basically depends on the columns, what you defined within your table. If your table contain 5 columns, then the model classes is going to contain 5 columns. If the table contains the ID as integer here, it will also create a property called ID with type integer. In database type, if you are containing a column name of Bharkar type, then in our .NET model class, it will create a column with the name and the type is going to be string. So basically in database side, the data type is going to be based on the database, and in model class, right, it is nothing but your .NET class. In this case, it is going to use the .NET data type. Apart from this thing, your table might be contain some primary key, might be contain some foreign keys, right? So in this case, the model class also going to contain the primary keys and also going to contain the foreign keys as associations. Or you can say primary key, foreign key means it is the key, and the foreign key will be considered as your navigation property, right? So primary key, foreign key is there, and those are going to be represented as navigation properties. Again, we have discussed two types of a navigation property. One is referential navigation property, and what one is the other? Collection navigation property, right? So the foreign key means it is going to be a the foreign key table, right? It is going to contain a referential navigation property, and the parent key table, right? It is going to contain a collection navigation property. We have discussed this. Again, we are going to discuss this thing in detail. If your database contains some views, then view might be contain some column, and in this case, right, based on the view, the entity framework will going to contain model, class, and the properties. For function, right, within function, it is containing some statements. And you know in .NET, right, if you want to write some block of statement, then what you need? Can anybody tell me? If I want to write some business logic, if I want to write some, if I want to execute some statement whenever required, right, then in that case, what I need to do in .NET? What exactly I need to define? Can anybody tell me? Guys? Sorry?
Sorry, methods.
So suppose you are defining some storage procedure or some storage functions in the SQL Server database, then what is the use of a storage procedure and function? It is basically to execute block of statements. Yes or no? If you want to execute, if you want to implement some business logic at the database level, then you might be go with the storage procedure, or you might be go with the storage function, right? And
Yes.
if I want to execute some logic, right, some statement in the data in the .NET application, then where I need to put those logic, where I need to put those statements, inside a method or anywhere?
You can do that.
Sorry?
You can use a using statement, sir.
No,
The using statement.
Using statement is fine, but that using statement belongs to a particular method, or directly at class level I can use using statement.
Well, you're gonna need the SQL client or Oracle or whatever you're trying to.
No, I'm not talking. I'm not talking about the database end, right? So what I'm talking about is if I want to write some logic, right? If I want to develop some if I want to execute some statement, right? Then where I need to write those statements?
You need to include those statements, like encapsulate into methods.
Exactly. That is what I want to tell. Right? Suppose you want to write some statement, simply println statement. Can I write that println statement, or is simply that console.writeLine statement? I just want to print the hello world name. Can I write that statement directly at class level, or I have to include that statement within a method or within a function?
Yes, we need to use that console, like
right? For example, let me create an application with the name database first approach. Okay. So I'm providing the name as DB first approach, right? I'm providing the name as a DB first approach, right? Can I write the control right line statement here? Is that possible? Can I write some logic like this here? 10 plus 20 minus 30 here? No.
Yes, like you can define variables here, but you
No,
cannot use
I'm not talking about variable. I'm talking about the business logic. I want to execute some println statement, some expression. Is this possible?
We need to include in main method.
So can I put this thing inside main method?
Yes.
Can I create a void some method, right? And within that method, can I put all this logic?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right. So basically what it means? It means if you want to execute some logic, right? If you want to if you want to execute some statements, then those statements should be inside a block. And that block in a .NET world, we are saying it's a method, right? So without method, you cannot write or you cannot execute any logic. Yes, at class level, you can declare the variable, but declaring variable doesn't make any sense, right? If I'm declaring the variable integer x equals to 10, and if I'm not utilizing that variable, then what is the meaning of declaring that variable here? Or if I'm declaring the variable xyz, and I'm not using that variable anywhere in my method, right? And if you are not executing the method, means this variable is never going to be used. For example, I use that variable here, xyz, I use that variable here. If I never called this method, is that value what store inside this variable is going to be used? No, it is never going to be used, right? So whether you declare the variable at the class level or not, that doesn't matter if you are not utilizing those variables. And if you want to utilize those variables, right, then definitely you have to utilize inside a method in .NET. So in the same case, right, if you are defining some functions, right, or if you are getting confused, let me this is not this is your storage function, and this is your storage procedures, right? So if you are declaring some functions or storage procedures, right, in SQL, right, then those things are going to be included in your .NET application as functions or methods, right? So if you are defining some table value function, or if you are defining some storage procedure, then those are going to be included in .NET as method or functions. Clear? If you are creating sp get by name, then he will create a method with the name sp get by name. And whenever you want to execute the logic, what is whenever you want to execute the storage procedure, what you define in the database, then you have to call that method which is included by the .NET framework. Understanding or not? Getting my point or not? Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? So basically, if your database contains some storage procedure or storage functions, right, then those are going to be included as method or functions, where it is going to be included inside the context class. We have discussed what is this context class. So inside this context class, it is going to be included as method. And for this tables and views, it will created entities, right? And those entities are going to be included in the where inside the context class as a DB set of a T entity, right? Clear or not?
Yes.
Right? And one more thing, guys, you have to remember, right? In this case, I know this is my table, right? So based on the table, he will create the model class. He knows the view and he knows the signature of the view, so he will create the model class. But in this case, storage function, if it's a table valued function and storage procedure, it might be possible that it is going to return a result set. Yes or no?
Yes.
You can create a storage procedure where you might be return some data, some table of content, right? That might be a single record or it might be a multiple records, right? So in that case, right, what data it is returning, right? What is written by the storage procedure or table valued function, right? Those are going to be included as complex type. Understand what is a complex type? Now it's nothing but a class only, right? So in this class is not belonging to any database model, right? So this is separate. This model class is based on the table and view. But in this case, what the storage procedure a table value function return, right? Based on that, it will create a complex type. And whenever the function execute, the data what the storage procedure or function return, that will be stored inside this complex type. If you are returning a collection, it will create a collection of that type. If you are returning a single object, right, it will create an object of that type. So these are the things that you need to remember. And in this case, right, those things what I'm showing in this case, right, are going to be automatically generated by the entity framework. And what is entity framework? Entity framework is a ORM tool, right? And what is ORM tool? The ORM tool is basically going to generate the model classes based on your database, or based on your model classes, it might be generate the database. And in this case, we are going with the DB first approach. In this case, what it means your database is first exist, and based on the database only, it is going to create the model classes and functions and a complex type based on the database structure. Clear, guys?
Yes, can you repeat the last line that says like a return store procedure? Yeah,
Right.
this.
See, if you are creating a storage procedure, then can you return some two table inside that storage procedure? Can you write a complex join where you are going to return the data from multiple database table?
Yes.
In that case, what is the return type? For that return type, do you have any class in any model classes in your application?
No.
Then how you are then how entity framework is going to store that data? For that
So
purpose,
basically,
based on the return type, right? What is the storage procedure is going to return? It is going to create a complex type, and this complex type will include the properties, right? What is the storage procedure is going to return? If it is returning 5 properties from 3 different tables, it is going to contain 5 properties. And what type of a data is going to be returned by each property, accordingly, it will decide the data type.
okay.
Understand? And
Yes. So
complex type,
basically,
it's a class only,
class only. Okay.
right? So we know complex type means it's a class.
Okay.
Clear?
Yep.
Right. So we have already discussed when to use database first approach. So what we are going to do? So I'm going to show you this with the console application, but it is not limited. It is not limited means you can use this database first approach with any kind of your application. You can use it with Web API, MVC, WCF, WPF, right? Any kind of application, you can use this one. But I'm going to show you this thing using the console application, because console application is the best platform to learn anything, right? Why? Because suppose I'm explaining using WSAFE, and if you do not know what is WSAFE, then you will feel it is very difficult to understand the concept. But console application is the one which is and everybody knows how to develop, and it is the easiest way to develop application and run the code, right? So let us first see what are the things we are going to do. So we are going to create these things, right? So you can see I'm going to create a standard table, student table, right? And if you see the, if you see the what is the difference between standard 1, standard 2, standard 3, standard 4? The people, the student who is studying, he is studying in which standard, right? Standard 1, outstanding, right? Standard name means what is the standard of that student, whether he is a good student or average student or below average student. That is what I'm mentioning in the standard table. Student table means what is the name of the student, what is the ID, right? And what kind of student he is, whether he is a good student or average student or below average student. That is what standard ID column is mentioning. So here standard ID is the primary key, and here standard ID, what you are seeing in this student table, it is the foreign key pointing to the primary key of standard table. That means in this case, there is a one-to-many relationship. Standard table having a one-to-many relationship with the student table, and but student table having one-to-one relationship with the standard table. That means what? It means if this standard ID can be used by multiple table. It might be possible that the student Virat having standard ID 1, the student Rohit might be having the same standard, right? If both are outstanding student, right? So there is one to many and many to one relationship, right? Then again, this is the teacher table, right? And based on the feedback, right, we are also giving a standard whether the teacher is an outstanding teacher, or whether the teacher is a good teacher, average teacher, or below average teacher, right? So you can see this is the teacher ID. It is the primary key. And in this case, the standard ID table column is nothing but your primary key, which is pointing to the standard ID column of the standard table. And you can see here few teachers having the same standard, right? Preeti and Hina having the same standard ID 2, and Priyanka and Samvit having the same standard ID 3, and Anurag and Sisant, right? They are having also the same standard ID. That means here one-to-many relationship, but each teacher having a single standard, that is one-to-one relationship. And this is student address table. So you can store the student details here, and because of normalization, right? We are going with the normalization mechanism, so we should not store everything in the student table, right? So here student, and I'm keeping that student address into a different table, and here I'm storing the address 1, address 2, right? The mobile number and the email ID, and here this is nothing but student ID, and this student ID is nothing but referring to this student ID column of the student table, right? And this is the you can consider this is the foreign key, right? And this is the primary key. And in this case, right, and this foreign key, what I'm maintaining in this student address table, it is also my primary key. And whenever a foreign key is based on the primary key table, then there is one-to-one relationship between the table. So here student ID, one student having one student address, or you can say one student address belongs to one student table. So in this case, this is your one-to-one relationship. Is that clear? How I can say it is one-to-one relationship? Guys, right? And this is my course table. And in this course table, right, you can see I'm providing courses, and there is a relationship with the teacher table. The teacher ID I'm included here, and student course. Student course means this is many-to-many relationship between student and the course, right? So one student might be take multiple course, and multiple course is given to multiple students, right? There is there is many-to-many relationship, right? Now I'm going to create this database structure, right? So this is the database, right? This is the database tables, what I'm going to use throughout the .NET, throughout this entity framework sessions, right? So I'm not going to create this database again and again, right? So I'm just going to create these things once, and I'm going to use for all the sessions, right? So if you look at this thing, so I'm creating one database with the name EFDemoDB. I'm using that database. Here you can see the student ID. It is nothing but the primary key column. And I'm also making this as identity. I'm entering some data, whatever I'm showing in the UI, right? Presentation. This is student ID 1, STD 1, 2, 3, 4, outstanding, good, average, below average. If you look at these things, right, then you will see the same thing, right? So this is outstanding, good, average, and below average, STD 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? And you can see the same thing here, right? Then and here I do not need to enter the standard ID because by default it is going to be auto generated, and the value is going to be start from 1, and each time it will increment the value by 1. This is the teacher table, and as I mentioned, right, this is the teacher table, and teacher table having a relationship with the standard table. And what is the relationship? uh, Foreign key relationship, right? So the standard table is the column of the teacher table, which is the foreign key pointing to the standard table ID column, right? Now that is what I'm mentioning here. You can see standard ID, it is the foreign key which is referring to the standard table, right? And I'm inserting some data again, as it is the primary key, the teacher ID values, I do not need to insert. But while inserting, I have to provide the standard ID column values, right? Creates course table, right? In this case, you can see course ID, course name, and this course is taught by which teacher, right? That is what I'm mentioning here. Again, there is a many to one relations, right? One course might be right. In this case, this course is going to be taught by a particular teacher, right? There is one-to-one relationship, but between the course and between the teacher and this course table, there is one-to-many relationship. What it means? It means one teacher might be taught might be take many courses, right? So and then I'm inserting some data into the course table. and then I'm creating the student table. And here you can see again, it is making the foreign key relationship with the standard table, and the column is standard ID, inserting some data, right? This is my student address table. And here you can see it is the important thing that you need to remember. Student ID, as of now, we have discussed the one-to-many relationship, many-to-one relationship, right? But this is where you need to remember, this is nothing but your one-to-one relationship, right? As of now, whatever primary key, foreign key we have implemented, those are one-to-many and many-to-one. But in this case, this is one-to-one. This student ID is going to be my primary key, means this value cannot be duplicated, right? And again, it is pointing to the primary key column student ID. That means one student having one address, or you can say one address belongs to a single student, right? And I'm entering some data, right? And again, here you can see I'm not making this as my identity column, right? That is the point that you need to, this is not my identity column. So I have to enter the data manually. And this is student course table, right? And this is many-to-many relationship, right? You can see there is no primary key. This is student ID. No, there is a primary key, but in this case, it is going to be a composite primary key, right? Means the combination will be unique. So one student, one course ID. There should not be any duplicate on this. One student, one course ID, right? This, the combination is going to be my unique. And in this case, this student ID refers to the student table, this course ID refers to the course table. And you know what is composite primary key, right? Whenever the primary key is created based on multiple tables, then that is going to be a composite primary key. And in this case, I'm entering some data, right? You can see one, right? One student ID, I'm entering multiple times, but the course ID is going to vary. In this case, one, in this case, two. I cannot enter, right, two value at the same time. This is not allowed because one, the combination is already exists. So you cannot insert another one value. Yes, you can insert one, two value, that is fine, right? This is my student address table. And in this case, there is the relationship between the student and course is many-to-many. So many students can take many courses, right? You can say this is one student, that student taking many courses. And this courses too is going to be taken by this student, right? Or you can say this is one course, right? This course is taken by one student. The same course is also going to be taken by a different student. So there is many-to-many relationship between the student and the course. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the database tables. Okay, what is the issue? Where is the error? Line number 99. What is showing error? My DB is not created. Why? Okay. The DB created and I'm using that DB, right? Now I'm creating the standard table, right? I'm inserting some data into the standard table. I'm creating the teacher table. All right. I'm inserting some data into the teacher table. I'm creating the course table. I'm inserting some data into the course table. I'm creating the student table. I'm going to insert some data into the student table. I'm going to create the student address table. I'm going to insert some data into the student address table, creating the student course table. I'm going to insert some data into the student course table, right? Now, so our database is ready, right? So our database as per our requirement is ready. But if you remember, as I mentioned, right, it is not only you can create tables, right? But also you might be have some views, you might be have some stored procedures, you might be have some stored functions, right? So that is also, that is what you also need to understand, right? Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a few stored procedures and views so that you can understand the concept very easily, right? So you will have a very good idea. So right now, what I'm going to do, I'm creating a storage procedure. So in this case, you can see this SP get course by student ID storage procedure. It is taking the student ID as an input, and it is returning me the course ID, right? What this student ID, right? Particular student taking what course, that course ID. What is the course name? And who is teaching that course, right? That teacher ID, it is going to return me. And in this case, you can see it is going to return some different columns, right? And for that purpose, I'm here using the student S table, right? Left outer join with student course table and left outer join with the course table, right? So basically, as I'm going to fetch the teacher information, right? See what is the, right? What is see here course, right? From the course table, it is getting the teacher ID. From the course table, it is getting the teacher name. From the course table, it is getting the course ID. So if you go to the course table, right, then you will see that this course table having course ID, course name, and the teacher ID. Course ID, course name, and the teacher ID. So you can see the course ID, course name, and the teacher ID. But simply from this table, you cannot get all the information, because for which student, basically in this case, I'm just trying to figure out the teacher, the student, one of the student, right? Let's say the student is, what is the name of the student? Virat. What are the courses is taken by Virat? That information I need to fetch. That means I need to go with this, first of all, I need to join the student with the student course table, right? Then I need to join with the course table, because from the course table only I can get the course name, right? So if you go to the course table, right? Course ID, course name, and the teacher ID. So in this case, course ID is coming from the course table. Course name is coming from the course table. Teacher ID is also coming from the course table. But from this course table, I cannot fetch the information of student, right? From this table, I can fetch all the information. But for particular student information, I need to know. So from then what I need to do, first of all, I need to go where the whichever courses is taken by the student, that information we are putting inside this student course table, right? A particular student taking one course, that information we are mapping in this table. That means, first of all, I need to make the join between student table with the student course table. From this joining, I can get the course ID. I can take this course ID, and then I can go to the course table and I can get the course name and the teacher ID. So three joining is required. So two joining is required. First joining between the student table and student course table. And once you join this thing, then you can make a join with the course table, right? And then you can fetch the data. So in this case, this is what I'm returning, right? Now, if you execute this storage procedure by passing the name as, let me pass one, right? You can see the course of Virat. So name one is Virat taking the course IT1, whose course name is this, and who is going to teach teacher, whose ID is one. So this is what this storage procedure is all about. The second storage procedure, it's a very, and in this case, it is, what is the return? The return is going to be a result set. So what exactly the storage, the ended framework is going to do for this particular storage procedure, it is going to create a complex type so that it can store the result of the storage procedure, right? The next storage procedure is this one, insert storage, insert student storage procedure. It's a very simple storage procedure. What exactly the storage procedure is going to do? It is going to insert the student information in the student table. And once the data is inserted, what is the ID, right? The newly created student ID. That is what it is going to return from this storage procedure, and it's a single value, so no need to create any complex type. Complex type will come into the picture when you are returning some multiple records and multiple columns records, right? So this is another storage procedure, update storage procedure, and this storage procedure, it's not returning anything. It is just simply going to update the data of a particular student, right? Whatever name I'm providing, whatever ID, right? Based on this ID column value, it is going to update the standard ID, first name, last name, all these things, right? Right, then what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a delete storage procedure. This storage procedure is basically going and deleting the existing student, right? So whatever student I'm providing, that student record is going to delete from the student table. And this is nothing but a view, and you can see a view is nothing but a selected SQL query, compiled SQL query, and that SQL query is going to be a select statement only. You cannot write update insert statement while creating the view, and in this case view is going to join the student table and student course table, and it is returning the student ID, name, last name, and whatever courses, right, that particular student is taking. All this information is going to return by this view, and in this case it is going to create a class for this particular view, right? So we have included a storage procedure, we have included views, we have included storage procedure, which is going to return some scalar value, and for that particular, for scalar value, we do not need to write any kind of, it is not going to create any complex type. But we have also created some storage procedure where it is going to return me some more records, right? Records in the sense, you can say some result set. For that purpose, it is going to create a complex type. And in our database design, we have included multiple tables. We have included primary key, foreign key tables. We have included identity tables. We have also identity column. We have also included not identity column, right? We have also maintained a one-to-one relationship, one-to-many relationship, and a many-to-many relationship. And this is, let's assume this is our complete database, and the database is ready. Now, what is our requirement? Our requirement is we need to use database first approach, and we need to create the required model classes, methods, and complex types so that we can work with this database. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So for that purpose, let's go and create any application, right? You can use any version, right? As of now, these are the versions where I can use this one, right? 12, 15, 17, 19, 22. But I would suggest to go with these three, 17, 19, 20, 22, because we are going to use the latest .NET, I mean the latest framework, right? Latest framework in the sense Entity Framework 6.2. Right? Let me show all these things step by step, right? So I have created the console application, that is the name is DB Fast Approach, right? Next, what I'm going to do, I need to use Entity Framework to communicate with the database what we have just created, right? For that purpose, right click on your project, right? Guys, remember these steps, right? And please observe. Right click on the project name, then select add new item. Right click, again I'm showing you these steps. Right click on your project, say right click on your project, not on your solution. This is your solution. This solution might be multiple projects, and this is your particular project. Right click on this project and select new item. Once you select new item and then go to the Visual C# items, there is a section called data. Inside this data section, you have to select this ADO.NET entity data model. And this ADO.NET entity data model means this EDM is nothing but your entity data model, which is going to be, which is nothing but your entity framework, right? And let me show you what is the model name. It is giving me the model name as student data model, right? Let me select this one, and you can change the model name here, and I'm providing this model name as student data model. You can give any name as per your choice. There is no restriction, right? So I have provided. Then you have four options. DB EF designer from database, empty EF designer model, empty code first model, code first from database. So what this EF designer from database saying, that it creates a model in the EF designer based on an existing database. If you are having one existing database and if you want to design your model classes, then you have to go with this option. What is this saying? Creates an empty model in the EF designer as a starting point for visually designing your model. Right? Empty EF designer model means, now in this case, what you will do, it will not create the models based on your database, but it will give you the flexibility so that you can design the entity framework model, right? Manual in the sense, in this case, from the EF designer, you have to look at the database table, and yes, there is a table called student, right? Let me create the student table in the EF. Yeah, yes, there is a relationship with the other table. Let me do these things again. That means if you are having the existing database, right, and in this case, automatically entity framework will create the model classes. In this case, based on your existing model classes, right, you have to create the based on your existing database, you have to create the model classes. Empty code first means create an empty code first model as a starting point for designing your model using, right? So in this case, using code, you have to design the model, right? Empty means everything you have to design. And this is nothing but you can consider this is the model first approach. Model first approach in the sense, based on your entity, based on your model, right? It is going to create the model classes as well as create the databases, right? And this is code first means based on your code, it is going to create the existing database, right? These are the four options. We are going with this option because our database is already ready and we are going to create the model classes based on our database. Click on the next button. Once you click on the next button, it will take you to this screen. And from this screen, the first step is to select the connection string. So if the connection string is already available, then you can select that, or else you can go with the by creating a new connection. So let me show you how to create a new connection. So in the new connection, you have to provide the connection properties. What is the data source? Data source means what kind of a database you are going to interact. You are going to interact with Microsoft SQL Server. You are going to interact with Oracle. You are going to interact with MySQL. No, I'm going to interact with MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, right? Then you have to choose the data source. Currently, right, you can see only these two options are there because for MySQL, you have to install some different DLL, right? For Oracle, you have to install some different DLL. But for Microsoft SQL Server, by default, this SQL client is installed. So you can select that. And here you can see that .NET. What is this Microsoft SQL Server? Now, this is the .NET framework data provider for SQL Server. If you remember in our ADO.NET classes, we have discussed some data provider, and the data provider are basically responsible when you are interacting with a particular database. The data provider for Oracle is different, data provider for SQL Server is different, data provider for MySQL is different, and same is in this case also. So in this case, if your database is SQL Server, you have to choose this data provider. This data provider, what exactly it is going to do, right? So whenever you write some statements, right, link you to entity statements, right, then those statements needs to be converted into SQL, and then those statements are going to be executed by the database. Then in this case, this .NET data provider will look at the underlying database, right? What kind of a database is this? It is a SQL Server database. Okay, let me generate the TSQL statement which should be understood and executed by the SQL Server database. No, it's a MySQL database. Okay, then let me use the MySQL.NET data provider and generate the TSQL statement so that those statements are going to be executed by the MySQL database. Why it is going to be do like this? Because the way of writing the code in Oracle might be different in the way we are writing the code in SQL Server. It might also be possible that in MySQL, the way of writing the code is going to be different, because suppose you are using that you want to fetch the top 10 records. Select the top 10 star from table name. That is the syntax we are using in SQL Server. But this syntax will not work in MySQL. This syntax will not work in Oracle. then for that particular purpose, then how to write the statement so that it can return me the top 10 records from the database, right? That kind of things is going to be taken care by this .NET data provider. So once you generate the entity framework model classes, right? And tomorrow you are using tomorrow you are using SQL Server database. Today you are using SQL Server database. Tomorrow you migrate to a different database, MySQL. No issue. You do not have to change anything on your application code, right? What you just need to change? You just need to change the ADMX file. Currently, it is pointing to SQL Server. You have to create the ADMX file, which is pointing to the Oracle database server, and the rest of the application code is going to be same. Now you are not writing any code specific to any database. You are writing code using .NET application, right? And the .NET data provider will take the responsibility to convert such code into some kind of a TSQL statement so that the underlying database can understand the things. Is that clear? Guys?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So select Microsoft SQL Server, click on the OK button, right? Then once you select, then in the server name, you have to provide the IP address, the machine name, right, where your database server is, right? So in this case, it is my local machine. I'm providing this. This is nothing but your server name. Copy the server name and paste it here. Once you provide this, then you have to choose which kind of authentication you want to use, whether you want to use Windows authentication or whether you want to use SQL Server authentication. If you are selecting SQL Server authentication, then you have to provide the username and password. And while providing the username and password, do you want to save the password in the connection string? No, I don't want to save. Then don't check it. And if you want to save, then you have to check it, right? And then I'm using the Windows authentication, right? And in this case, right, Windows authentication, because on my machine, I have not installed the SQL Server in mixed mode authentication, right? So while installing the SQL Server, if you are only selecting the Windows authentication, then you cannot use SQL Server authentication. If you use mixed mode authentication, then you can use both Windows and SQL Server authentication, right? So by default, by bound, I'm going with this one. But if you are installing SQL Server using mixed mode, then you can go with the SQL Server authentication, right? And once you provide the data source, the server name, and the authentication details, then in this drop-down list, right, select or enter a database name, right? From this, you will see, you will find all the databases that are available inside this server, which is providing access to this authentication, right? So in this case, I'm creating one database, EF demo DB. I'm selecting that database. And here another option is attach a database file, right? So if you know that we can also, what I can say, restore the database, right? We can generate the database files, MDA file, LJ file. And if you want, you can also include the MDA file also. That is not part of this session, right? That is a different story altogether, right? So now I'm selecting the database. Once I select the database, I can test the connection. So test connection means whatever information you have provided is correct or not. If correct, then it will give you test connection succeeded. Else it will give you some error and what is the exact reason for that error. Once you provide these things, right, once your connection properties are ready, click on the OK button. It will take you back, right? It will take you back to the screen where you can see the newly created connection string, right? So this is my newly created connection string, right? And this connection string include the SSTL, it is include the MSL, right? And it is also include the CSTL. Now then you can see save connection settings in appconfig file. Why it is saying save connection settings in appconfig file means in this case, as it's a desktop application, so it is going to create app configuration. If it's a web application, if you are working with web application, instead of app config, you will find web config, right? And then yes, I want to save the connection string in the connection in the app setting. So by default, this checkbox is checked. Otherwise, you have to check this one. Then if you want to modify the connection string name, right, then you can modify. But I'm going with the default one. So how it is providing the connection string means database name. This is nothing but your database name. by adding the word entities. This is the default naming convention which is followed by entity framework, but this is not mandatory. If you want, you can change this name. I'm going with the default one, ef underscore demo underscore db entities, right? Once you provide this information, then click on the next button. So once you click on the next button, then it will show you which entity framework version you want to use. You want to use entity framework 5 or entity framework 6.x. I'm going with the latest one, so you have to select this 6.x. If 6.x is not supported in your machine or the Visual Studio version you are using, you have to choose 5.0. So on my machine, the latest one is installed, so I'm going with the latest version. Click on the next version. Once you click on the next version, then what it will do, it will load all the database schema. All the database schema in the sense, it will include all the tables, right? Whatever thing. It will include all the tables, it will include all the views, it will include all the storage function, and it will also include all the storage procedure. So right now you can see all those things here, right? Tables, views, storage procedure, and function. Right now you have the option, right? Whatever number of database table you want to all or you want to stop. If you want to include all, you can select all. If you want to include few of the database table, you can unselect those which you do not want to be generated as part of your EDM, right? So I'm going with all the database table, right? Now we have created one view. If you want to include that view, yes, I want to include that view, select that view. We have created some storage procedure. You want to include the storage procedure? Yes, I want to include those storage procedure. So, and here we are not using function, but if you want to use function, then also that is fine. That is going to be displayed in this section, and that is also going to be generated as a function, right? And here, pluralized or singularized generated object. So what it means if you are creating the database, see, in this case, I'm not using that format, right? But people are using student, students. In the database, the table name is students. And if you check this checkbox, right, then the class, what it is going to generate, it is going to generate with the name student. S will be removed. And if you uncheck this checkbox, right, then whatever the table name, the class name is going to be same. Include foreign key columns in the model, right? While generating the model, do you want to include the foreign key columns, right? Foreign key columns means, as I have told you, there is something called navigation properties. Do you want to include those navigation properties as part of your model? Yes, I want to include. You have to check this one. Import selected storage procedure and functions into the entity model. You have selected some storage procedure and function. Do you want to include those things as well into the entity data model? Yes, I'm selecting means I want to import only, na? Then you have to select this one, right? And once you select these three namespaces, then you have to provide the model space, right? Model namespace, let me see. I'm going with the default one, or I'm changing the name. Yeah, I'm going with the default one, right? So now you have to provide the same namespace, right? Guys, any question from these three checkboxes?
So, hello.
Yeah, tell me.
Okay, what is the purpose of the pluralized or singularized generated object? I understood if the table name is singularized, then it will make the class with pluralized name. But like, what is the purpose?
See, basically, see, whenever we are working with database, right? In the database, most of the people, what they follow, teacher. So basically, they know I'm going to store multiple record in this table. So what they decide, okay, let me give this table name as a teachers. Teachers means it's a pluralized form of teacher, right? So I'm going to store multiple teachers, so I'm putting this name as a teacher, right? But while you are working with .NET, right? So you never create the classes like employees, classes like students. S is not there, right? You can check any classes, built-in classes, you can take into consideration. The class is never going to be pluralized, right? And because this is a standard, and if you want to follow that standard while defining the model classes, right? And for that particular purpose, this checkbox is there. You want to follow the standard name or not, right? That is what you can this one, and this is a optional, right? See, while creating the classes, if you create the class name with the student or students, right? Does Visual Studio compiler give you any warning or error? No, they are not going
No.
to give you any error or warning, but it's a standard, right? If you take the classes, right, which is provided by entity framework by default, any built-in classes, right, then you will see that none of the, never they are making that class as in the pluralized form, right? You can take any thread, right? Right, thread is a class, delegate, any built-in classes you take into consideration, all are singularized.
Yeah, that is fine. So like here in
It's
our database,
optional. So
yeah,
basically, you want to follow the .NET standard naming convention or the database naming convention. That is what this checkbox is all about.
no, no, that I understood. But like here in our database, we have one table which and the name of the table is student. So like in our application,
In this case, this doesn't matter, because in this
okay,
case the tables, right, what I'm using in the plural singularized form. So for this particular example, this doesn't matter,
oh, okay, got it.
right? If I'm creating this table with students, right, you can try this one. Then while creating the model, you can see it will create the model as student,
Okay,
right?
okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any question from anyone else, guys?
No,
No.
Okay. So once you provide these things, right, then you just need to click on the finish button, right? So once you click the finish button, it will take some time to create the entity data model. Let's wait for some time. Right? Based on your database schema, right? If your database containing more number of tables, indexes, storage procedures, functions, views, right? And if you are including more number of database schemas or database object, right? It is going to take more time, right? So you can see it is creating these things. And in this case, it is going to give me one warning. The student does not have a primary key defined. Yes, that's fine, because it's a view, and the view means it is not required, right? So that is fine. So you can see this is my database entity data model. You can see. So all the 6 things are included, and this is my view. This view is independent. There is no link between anyone else. And what is 0, 1? What is you can see this is a star. Star means what? This is many to many relationship, right? This is 0, and you can see this is 0, 0, 1 and star. Means from here, standard table, there is the one to many relationship, and from this table there is one to one relationship, right? Again, the relationship, what this mean, right? We are going to discuss in detail, but for now we are not keep focusing on that thing, right? So our entity data model is created. Save these things. This is nothing but your designer view of entity data model or EDMX. So this is the designer view of your EDMX file, right? Now, next, what I'm going to show you, right? So in this case, you can see the connection string, it is going to be created inside the appconfig file. Go to appconfig settings, and you can see this is your connection string, right? We have already discussed these connection strings, right? Contains 3 things. One is CSTL, that is conceptual schema data layer. SSTL, this is storage schema data layer. And this is, and the next one is conceptual storage mapping layer. This is your data provider. What data provider? SQL Server, right? This is your connection string. Connection string includes your database source, right, where the database is located, and initial catalog, it is nothing but your database name, and integrated security means what kind of authentication you are using, right? So this is your connection string, right? Next one is using entity framework, right? Now we have included the entity framework. We will understand many concepts in entity framework, right? But now let's see how to use entity framework, right? So entity framework means, first of all, you need to understand what is the connection string. This is my connection string. And this is my, you can, in the right hand side, you can see the EDMX section. In this section, you can see this is my course.cs, that is my course class, right? Model class, which is based on the course database table. This is my student table, standard table. This is student address. This is teacher. And you can see we have included one view. And what is the view name? View student course. This is my view, right? And if you remember, we are having one storage procedure which is returning me some data, sp get courses by student ID. If you look at that, there is a complex type prepared, sp get courses by student ID underscore result. What it means, what is the result type of this storage procedure? By taking that, by adding the underscore result, it is creating a complex type. And in this case, you can see it is using it is including three properties. What are course ID, course name, and teacher ID. Why three properties? Because from this storage procedure, it is returning three properties. Clear? This is the things, right? And as I mentioned you, okay, so you understand these things. You understand tables, right? Columns, primary key, foreign key, right? Everything is going to be, I will explain these things again in detail, right? If you go to student, right? This is nothing but your student. So here you can see it is including some properties, navigational properties. It is including the standard student address and courses, right? Navigational properties. And these properties are created based on the foreign keys, right? And one more thing I have discussed the views. Views means basically it's a class, model class it is going to create. Storage procedure, I have to show you. Return storage procedure or function means what is the return that storage procedure or function is returning. Based on that, it is creating a complex class, right? And remember, as I mentioned you, right, the storage procedure and functions, they are included as method, where they are going to be included as method inside the context class, right? Now, if you look at this, this is my TT file. What is TT file? TT file means T for template, and this TT file will actually take the responsibility to generate this code, right? If you are looking at this definition, what exactly it is saying? This is a code generated from a template, right? From a template, this code is generated, and who is generating this code means the TT file. So in this case, wherever you see the .cs file, that is going to be generated by a TT. So in this case, all these are .cs files, right? So this is going to be generated by this TT, right? And in this case, this is one TT. That means this designer.cs or this student model contact.cs, these are the CS files. These CS files are going to be generated by this TT. And if you open this, as I mentioned, or already we have discussed, every model is going to be included here. Course, standard, student address, teacher, right, view, student, so everything is included as a DB set of T entity type. Then all the functions, right, whatever is there, you can see sp delete student, sp get courses by student ID, sp insert student. What is the code written? We will discuss in detail while we are going to use this method. Sp update students, right? That means we have created 4 storage procedure. All the storage procedure are included as method inside the context class, and all the models are going to be included as DB set of T entity type. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? And we have already discussed what is your context class. Now, whenever a class is derived from the derived DbContext class, then we can say that class is a context class. And the context class constructor should call the parameterized constructor of a DbContext class. And while calling the base class constructor, it should provide the database name or connection string. So in this case, this is nothing but your connection string, and this connection string information should be provided to the DbContext class constructor, so that the constructor can establish a communication link with the database, establish a session, and once the session is established, then you can perform the database CRUD operation. That means when you create an instance of this class, right, before executing this constructor body, finally, if you look at this default constructor, right? So you can see this default constructor, the body is not there, nothing is there. even though the body is not there, still this constructor is included by the framework. Why? Because the logic is not important to execute in this constructor. What is our main motto? We need to provide the connection string or database detail to this DbContext class constructor, and you know how to call a constructor. And for that purpose, it is including this default constructor, which is calling the parent class constructor. And once the parent class constructor got this connection string, then he will make whenever required will create the connection object. He will communicate with the database as per our business requirement, and then he can go and do the database operation based on the entity states, right? So we'll discuss everything in detail, but for now, I can show you. So here I'm creating an instance of my entity, or you can say this is my context class. And for this context class, what I'm trying to do, I'm accessing the student's data. And this is nothing but your student entities. So from this context class, please give me the list of all students, right? So once it return with the list of all students, I can store the student inside a collection of student type, and then I can go look through all the students. So in this case, what exactly the context class will do? So once you write in this statement, whenever you are creating an instance of this DbContext class, then this constructor is going to be fired, and this constructor is going to fire the DbContext class constructor, right? And this DbContext class constructor is going to establish a session with the database, right? Once the session is established, right, that means the connection, it is now connecting with the corresponding database, right? Then whenever I'm using this statement, right, then then the context class, okay, so if you are getting confused, make me this property as a context, right? So let me do this as context, right? So if you are getting confused, the context object now know what is the underlying database. Yes, the underlying database is SQL Server. And here the user trying to retrieve all the data from the student database table. Students entity means if you go to this property students, then it is saying this is nothing but your student model, and this student model is mapped with some database, right? And if you want to check which database, there are multiple options to know the student model is mapped with which database. I'm going to show you the simple option. Where is the student table, right? This is student table, and just go to table mapping. So it will give you the student is mapped to which database table. It is mapped to student database table. And in this case, this is my column mapping. So in student database, there is a column called student ID, which is mapped to the student ID of our entity. First name, last name, and these things, right? This information is already mapped. So in this case, right, from this, whenever I'm accessing this property, right, the context class know what is the model. The model is, or the entity is student. Then this student entity is mapped with which database? It is mapped with which database table? It is mapped with the student database table. Okay, let me fetch all the database, all the data from the student database table by creating a select statement, right? So in this case, what will happen? In this case, it will generate a select statement, and it will generate that select statement which is going to be understood by the underlying database. In this case, what is the underlying database? Microsoft SQL Server. So it will generate a select statement specific to Microsoft SQL Server, and that SQL Server statement execute on the database, and once it execute the data, once it execute the select statement in the database, it will return the data. And then once it return the data, it will convert that raw SQL data, right? Whatever data is written by the SQL statement, converted into .NET object. And once it converted into .NET object, then you can see that .NET object is going to store inside a .NET object, right? So in this case, if you want to know what kind of SQL statement is going to be generated, you can go to SQL Server Profiler, open the SQL Server Profiler, connect, click on the connect button, click on the run window, right? Once you click on these things, right, then run this, and then click on the start button, right? Once you click on the start button, right? It will start executing, it will establishing the connection with the database, it was creating the connection string, right? It is communicating with the database, creating the TSQL statement, right? And then execute those TSQL statement at the database. Whatever the data is written, that will be converted back into .NET object. Because entity framework, from a developer point of view, we are not working with SQL, we are working with .NET only. The SQL Server Entity Framework takes the responsibility to convert that .NET queries into TSQL, and whatever result written by the TSQL will be again converted back to .NET object, right? So in this case, if you want to see what SQL statement is executed, right? So you can see, select this one, right? And here you can see this is the select statement which is generated by the entity framework, right? What SQL statement? This is the SQL statement which is executed by the .NET framework, right? So this SQL statement executed on the server, and whatever data is written, that is going to be written, right? Clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? So this is how you can create your entity data model. So whatever I'm showing here, right? This is nothing but your, where is the DMX file? This one. This is nothing but your entity data model designer, right? So next, what we are going to discuss, we are going to discuss entity data model in detail, right? So doing the CRUD operation is not a big deal. What is the big deal? Understanding the code, how it is happening, right? You need to understand each of these, right? You need to understand the things in detail, whatever they are in the connection string, right? So for that purpose, first we need to start a discussion from this one. Okay, let me close all the window except the program class, and this is my entity data model, right? We need to understand this entity data model in detail. But before that, anybody having any question or how to communicate with the database using entity framework database first approach?
No.
Right. What are the steps to communicate with the database using DB first approach?
No.
Okay, fine.
Can you go into code, Visual Studio, into program.cs file?
I'm going to that.
So
Yes,
here on line number 15, after line number 15, after equal to sign, context the students.toList. It will basically like open the connection, fetch the data, and it will store the data into list students variable, right?
exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Right. Can anybody tell me what is this use of this question mark?
This student table, and inside the student address column, is there any email or not? It's checking null or not.
No, no, no.
No?
So this is our student object, right? Inside the student object, there is another object called student address. If this student address object is not null, then only fetch the email address. If this is null, then don't fetch this one. So basically, see, if I am accessing this email property on a null reference object, what it will give you? If the student address is null, then what it will give you?
Like a null reference exception.
Exactly. In this case, if I'm removing this one, right, student address, if I'm removing this one, then it will return me some exception. Okay, let me do this student dot student address. I'm making this as null, right? So in this case, if I run this application, okay, let me save this one. Entity framework, guys, it's very hectic, right? If you are working with entity framework, this is saving, updating, right, on the EDMX view, it is going to take more time, right? So in this case, if I run this application, it will give me some compilation, not compilation error, it will give me some runtime exception, right? So in this case, I'm not getting some runtime exception. Why? Student address. Okay, let me run this one in debugger mode. Why it is not making the student object now?
Here is student or student address, and I guess in the console.write line it's student or student address dot email.
No, that is the property. So if you go to the student table, there is a property called student address.
Yeah,
Okay, let me do one thing.
but where is the email? If you go into console.write line, you have
Email
mentioned.
email is available inside the student address table. So this is my student class. Inside the student class, this is my student address. And this is student address is a class. Inside the
Oh
student
yes,
address, email is there.
email
Right?
is there, yeah.
Right. So what I can do is student address equals to null. I'm making this as null. Then what I'm trying to do, I'm putting the student address here. Student address. I don't know why it is not taking effect. This is not taking effect. I don't know why. But yes. Okay. So do one thing. Okay.
Can you write like on line number 20 student or student address dot email?
Line number.
20 student dot student address dot email.
Line number 20 student address dot email.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a different story. Equals to null.
No.
That is not issue. That is not an issue. That is so it is showing empty, but it will not throw any error.
Error,
Okay,
yeah.
so do one thing. Okay, I'll show you in a different way. Find one. So student, right? So in this case, it is going to return me the student. Then what I'm trying to do is student dot student address. I'm making this as null, right? And then I'm taking this one and I'm putting that one here, right? So what is the name? Right? So now run the application. Again, it is not taking a student address.
Well, it says student dot address dot email.
No,
That
I
you're
just
printing.
see, I don't want to make that email property null, right? If I'm making this object null means that I mean the object is going to be null, right? So what I can do is a student object, right? New student.
Instead of null, can we try db.null?
No, I'm not using database here,
Okay.
right? So in this case, I'm just making the student address as now, right? Now it should throw me some error. Object reference not set to an instance of a null, right? Now it is throwing me null, not because of email, but because of this, right? Now, if I'm putting question mark here and I'm putting question mark here, then what will happen? In this case, what will happen? It will not print the email. Rather, it will what it will do? It will skip that statement, right? So now, stop this one and execute this. Now, in this statement, will not get any kind of error, right? So basically, this question mark will not check whether the email property having some value or not. Question mark is going to check whether this object is null or not. If this object is not null, then it will access the email property. If it is null, then it will not access this email property. Clear?
So can you put like a 2 question mark after student address and the email?
Two question mark is a different story altogether.
Okay.
Right? So here you cannot put two question mark.
No, not here. Like a student address, like 1 question mark after student address and 1 question mark after email. Yes.
You mean to here?
Yes. Yes.
No. What is the meaning
No.
of this question mark? See,
So
two
like
question mark. Okay, I'll show you one example of two question mark. Right. So basically, this is student address. Right. So basically, what I'm trying to make you is student address equals to new student address. Inside the student address, what are the properties? We have name, email, and a mobile, right? Email equals to some string value I'm putting here, and mobile also some string value I'm putting here, right? Some string value, right? Now what I can say is now the student address is now, right? Student address equals to null. Then if null, then put this one. Why it is sending me this thing? Right? So what it means if the student address is not null, right, then this student address will be set here. And if the student address is null, then whatever address you set, that will be assigned to the student, right? So this is the use of double question mark. So now you will see the email and mobile number because the student address is null. So you will see the email and mobile. Clear?
yes.
Right. So this is null collection operator, right? If this value is null, right, then you have to take this value. If this value is not null, then this value will be taken. Clear, guys? This is the difference
Yes.
between double question mark and this is the difference between single question mark. So
So here,
always whenever you are not sure whether this student object having any object or not, this variable having any object or not, then you have to put this question mark in order to avoid the runtime exception. And whenever you have some option, you know that sometimes this object might be null, and if you want to set some default values, then you have to use this one. Yeah, someone asking me some question.
so basically like a single question mark is checking like that particular object is null or not. If it's not null, then only it will like
Access
move
that
forward,
property. Exactly.
access that property. Okay.
Right. And in the case of a double question mark, it will like a ternary operator, you can consider. Whether you have to assign this value to this variable or you have to assign this value to this variable.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is what the use of question mark and this null collecting operator, right? So next, what we are going to discuss, right? We have already discussed these things from the high level point of view. Now we are going to discuss this thing in detail, right? So we are going to discuss entity data model in detail, right? So entity data model means we need to understand this, right? How exactly the entity framework uses this entity data model to perform the CRUD operation, right? To understand the entity data model, we need to understand, right, three things. One is SSTL, another one is CSTL, and another one is CS mapping, conceptual storage mapping. So what is storage schema definition? What is conceptual schema definition? And what is mapping model, right? All these things we need to understand in detail. If you want to know how exactly the entity framework works internally, then you need to understand these three things, right? So what is conceptual model, what is storage model, and what is mapping model? Let us go and discuss this thing in detail, right? So, so there are two ways you can understand this thing, right? One of the way is by visual representation, another one is by using the XML representation, right? If you want to see the visual representation, right click anywhere, select model browser, and this is nothing but your visual representation of your entity data model. And if you want to see the XML representation, then you just right click, open with, and there is some option called XML text editor. Click on that option. And as we have already the visual representation is already open, so you have to close that one. And once you close that one, then it will open your it will open the XML representation, right? So if you go to the connection string, right, then you will see that in the connection string, we are providing three things to the entity framework. One is CSTL, another one is SSTL, another one is MSL. And inside this EDMX, right, student model.edmx, you can see the name is same, student data model.edmx. So, and if you double click on this, this is the name, student data model.edmx. So whatever the view that you can see through image, that is the visual representation, and this is nothing but your XML representation. Rising, can you please stop your camera? Thank you. So what you can see here, you can see there are three different sections. One is STL, another one is CSTL, another one is CS mapping. STL means storage schema definition layer. So storage schema definition layer is basically going to represent your backend database, backend data store, right? So in this case, if you look at this, so this is our database. And whenever we create an idioms, right, whenever we create the entity data model, we have include few database columns, right? We have include views. We can include the storage procedures as well, right? And also, no doubt about it, while creating the databases, we are also including the primary key and the foreign key relationship. So every information related to the database is going to be stored inside this SSDL content. And guys, remember, this is a auto-generated file. Don't try to edit or update this content, right? I will show you, I will tell you in our coming session when you need to update these things. But as a beginner, as a fresher, don't touch this EDMX file, right? So in this case, this is your SSDL content, right? SSDL content means it is basically related to your store. So whenever you are saying something called EF demo DB model.store, store means it is the database section, right? So whatever I'm going to define within the schema, right? This is nothing but your database, right? You can see this is representing your provider name, right? SQL Server. So database is SQL Server, right? Now, how many database tables are there within your, right? How many database tables are there within your database, right? All, and how many tables you have included while creating the EDMX model, right? Every information is going to be stored here, right? So what information you can see? So it is including the course database table. It is including the standard, student, student address, student teacher, and the teacher. These are the 6 database table that we include while creating our entity data model. So each database table will be included as entity type. So in this case, this course is represent the course database table, standard represents the standard database table. Now expand this one. So inside the course database table, how many key is there and what are the properties is there, right? So if you go to the course database table, where is the course database table? Yes, we have made this as primary key, and how many columns are there? 3 columns are there. So this is the key property, that is the key property. It is going to represent the primary key column name. What is the primary key column name? Course ID. So inside this key section, you can find the primary key column. Then inside this property, right, how many properties are there? So 3 properties are there. So here you can see 3 property tag. One property representing the course ID, another property representing the course name, another property representing the teacher ID. And here you can see the data type. Type means the data type. These data type are not specific to .NET data type. These are your database data type, right? Inside database, you can see we are using int, we are using varchar, and we are using int. So this int not belongs to .NET. This int belongs to your database. And if you are thinking that yes, no, this is belongs to .NET only. Do you have any data type called varchar in .NET? No. So this is the data type. You can say, consider this is the data type of database. And in course ID, we have using that course ID as our identity column, right? If you go to course ID, you can see I'm making this column as identity, and that is what it is represented here. For the course name column, what is the maximum length? Go to your database and check the course name. What is the size you have specified? 100. So that max length is going to be 100, right? Do you align any null value, right? So in this case, right? In this case, this is your primary key. Primary key means it is not allowing any null value. This is the reason why you can see this is making nullable equals to false. So this is how it is going to create the entity, right? So this is the XML representation of the database table called course. Any question from this section? Guys, clear? Any particular statement which you are not understanding? Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? Similarly, you can verify other tables as well. Standard table. You can verify the student table, right? You can verify the student address table, right? You can verify the student course table, right? And in this case, if you remember student course table, how many primary, we have created the primary key based on how many columns?
2 columns.
2 columns.
That means it's a composite primary key. In this case, also you can see the key containing both the columns, right? Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? So here it is saying that a few students who doesn't have a primary key defined. That's why you can ignore this error. Why? Because he expecting that primary key column should be there, but in this case, right, there is no primary key column, right? And in this case, primary key column is not there. That is the reason why it is giving this error, but that's fine. So inside the view, if you see whatever where is the view? Yes. So we are selecting student ID, first name, last name, course ID, and course name. 5 columns are there. All those 5 columns you can see, right? So, and apart from these 5 columns, so you know course ID and the student ID, they are the primary key column in the respective table. So that is what included inside this keys property. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Up to now,
Yes.
everything is clear.
Yes.
Okay. So see, you are not learning the entity framework just to learn how to perform the CRUD operation. You should know what are the things available. This is the interesting thing, right? writing the code is very easy, right? Within one day, I can make you understand how to perform the CRUD operation, but understanding these things is important, right? So now, if you remember, we have created few foreign keys, and the foreign keys are represented in entity framework by using associations, right? So you can see association. So there is a foreign key, right? And this foreign key, right? Which table? There is a foreign key and a primary key relationship between teacher and a course table, right? Now, go to the database and go to the teacher and the course table. This is my teacher table and this is my course table, right? So in the course table, we are making a foreign key which is pointing to the teacher table IT column, right? So in this case, you can see there is a course teacher foreign key, right? 0 to 1 and star. 0 to 1 means this is one relationship and a star means this is a many relationship, right? So in this case, you can see from the teacher table, I'm making this teacher ID as a foreign key. And from where? Course table teacher ID, right? So from course table teacher ID, I'm making a foreign key which is pointing to teacher table teacher ID, and that is what it is mentioning here. So the principal teacher ID is depend on the course table teacher ID, right? So foreign key we are making here referential constraint, right? And the rest all other things you can also verify like standard ID, and there is a one relationship, right? There is one-to-one relationship between two constraint. Which table we are making one-to-one relationship? Create student course, not student course, student address, I think.
So
Right.
student address and student here.
Yes, a student address and a student table, right?
Yep,
So
yes.
this is my course. Yeah, this is my student table and this is my student address table, right? So student address table, student table. And you can see there is no star. Here it is multiplicity, and but here multiplicity is 0, 1. 0, 1 means there is one-to-one relationship between the student and a student address. Clear? And we have also having one many-to-many relationship where the student course table, right? Student course table. Right now, go to the student course. Where is student course? Right. So here you can see student course. There is multiplicity, right? So you can have multiple student, multiple course, right? So this is what you need to identify. What are the primary key and foreign key? You do not need to worry about all these things because these are going to be automatically managed by the .NET framework. Now for each database, for each storage procedure and function, you can see they are created as student functions, right? So sp delete student, this is nothing but your storage procedure name, right? And this parameter, it is expecting one parameter of student ID, right? Similarly, this is another storage procedure is expecting one parameter of student ID, which type is going to be integer, and it is going to be a in parameter or out parameter. That is also it is going to mention in the mode. Yes, it is going to be in parameter, right? So if you know, so we can create storage procedure with the in and out parameter. So basically, if storage procedure taking multiple parameter, then you need to specify what are the parameter, which type is in, and what are the parameter which type is out. Okay, in this session, right, in this case I'm not showing the student storage procedure without parameter, but once you start discussing how to consume storage procedure, at that time I will create a separate storage procedure by taking both the input and the output parameter, and I will show you how to use out parameter. But in that case, the parameter name, right, in that case that parameter is going to be out, right? Inside storage procedure, it is taking multiple parameter, like 3 input parameter, and if you want one output parameter, you can define that parameter out here, right? SP update storage procedure, it is also taking multiple parameter, right? So these are the storage parameter, right? And this entity container, it is basically going to discuss, right? It is basically going to store all the information, right? What course, standard, student, right, view, and this view is basically what is the select statement of the view that is mentioned here, and all the foreign keys, right? And entity data model is going to use this container to find out the everything, right? So inside this container, where is the container start? Yes, from here, database container is start. And this is just going to give you a schema information. Schema information means this is the course table and what is the schema. The schema is table. And what exactly this is? This is a table, right? This is a table. View student course. It's a table or it's a view. It's a view, right? And if it's a view, then what is the query for that view? This is the query. And in this case, this is the foreign key, right? This is the foreign key, and this foreign key is basically in between the teacher and course table, right? This is the information. And this is all about your storage schema definition layer, or you can say SSTL content, right? So all the database related information are going to be stored inside this, right? And whenever you update the ADMX file, right, these things are automatically going to be updated. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right? Right. This CSDL, it is nothing but your entity model, or you can say conceptual schema definition language, right? So you have the database, but whenever you are working with the entity framework, you are not going to write any SQL statements, right? You are going to interact with the database entities, right? If you remember, right? So entity framework create all these things, classes, functions, right? Everything is going to be created, and the context classes, all these things, right? Then how these context classes are created, and how these context classes are going to be used by entity framework, how these context classes are mapped with the database class tables, right? All this information we need to provide, or needs to be provided to the entity framework. And for that purpose, this is conceptual model. Conceptual model means it is nothing but your database model, right? So database model in .NET, right? So if you are having a table in the database, you should have a class in your application. That class information is going to be provided inside this CSTL content, right? So if you remember, while creating the models, right? So we have provided that model namespace, right? If you open this one, right? If you open this one while creating the entity framework, we have provided the model namespace. What is the model namespace? EF demo DB model, right? So you can see this is the model namespace, and everything is going to be same, right? You have seen the course database, the course database table. Yes, we are also having the course entity type. So in this case, this is not this section is not representing your database. This section is representing your model, or you can say this section is representing your data, your entities, right? Entities in the classes. Classes means those classes which are created in your .NET applications, right? This section is representing those things, right? So you are having a course database table. It is going to create a course class. Inside that course class, the course ID is going to be the primary key. And inside that course ID, it is going to include some course ID, course name, and teacher ID columns, right? And guys, if you remember, while creating, we have include foreign key columns in the model, right? This is the checkbox. That means what? It means if there is some primary key and foreign key relationship, right, those properties are also going to be included as part of the model. And this is nothing but your teacher and students, right? And if you go to the course table, right, then you will see that this course is there is a one-to-one relationship with one teacher, and this students table means this course is a one-to-many relationship with the students table, right? So let's go to the course database course class, right? So this is a course, right? So course, this is a course. Inside this course, there is a one-to-one relationship with the teacher and many relationship with the student. That means what? It means this course, right? This course is going to be taught, right? This course is going to be taught by a single teacher. This is the reason why you can see there is a single, I mean, this is a simple object of teacher type. But this course can be taken by many students. If many students want to learn this course, that is fine. This is the reason why you can see there is a collection of student property. So this is one navigation property. This is one navigation property also, right? And in our previous session, we have already discussed, we have two types of navigation property. One is a referential navigation property and one is your collection navigation property. Referential navigation property represents the one-to-one relationship between the entities. In this case, course and teacher entities having one-to-one relationship. And collection navigation property represents one-to-many relationship. One-to-many relationship means now the course and the student table having one-to-many relationship. So one course can be taken by multiple students. Clear, guys? And this
Yes.
information it is representing here. So you can say, and as I mentioned, singularize and pluralize, right? So if you remember, we have also checked this checkbox. What it means now, whenever it is creating a I mean a navigation property, if that property is a referential property, then it will include that property in singularized block, right? If that property is a pluralized, right? If it's a one to many, if it is representing one many relationship, then it will include that property in a sorry, if it's a referential property, then it is going to be singularized, and if it's a collection property, it is going to be pluralized. Pluralized means many, singularized means it's a single, right? So in this case, if you go to this course class, this is a single teacher, so it is going to be teacher. But in this case, you can see this is represented as S, pluralized, because it can be there is a one to many relationship. It is representing many students. Many students means it's a pluralized form. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the things, and again the rest of the things are going to be same. Student table, this is the key, and these are the property, and these are the navigation property. And one more thing, guys, you need to remember here, this type data type, it is not a database data type. These are your .NET data type. So int32, int32 is not there in database, right? If you are writing int32, it will give you some compilation error, right? So you can see the red square mark here, right? And here, if you type, right, if you are declaring some string variable here, you will get some compilation error. String is not there, a data type. So this integer and string, int32 and string, right? These are your .NET data types. And you have max length, whether you want to allow null value or not, right? These things are also applicable to here. Same thing, student database, student address, right? And then teacher table. For teacher database table, it is the teacher class. This is your view, right? Inside this view, then it is having the associations, means all the foreign key constant what we have discussed, one to many, one to one, right? Everything is going to be maintained by these things, right? And the same entity container is also there. And by default, lazy loading is enabled, which is true. I will show you what is lazy loading, what is eager loading, how you can disable lazy loading, all these things I'm going to explain, right? And this container means it is going to discuss what is exactly. So in this case, you can see this is self course, means it's a class, it's not a table, right? Everything is going to be represented, and you can see this uh, function import. Function import section means whatever the storage procedure or methods are there, those are going to be implemented as function import. And what is the parameter? Student ID, integer type, input parameter, and rest of the things are going to be same. This is nothing but your conceptual model. Conceptual model is nothing but your database, the database representation in the .NET application, right? How the database is represented in the data in your .NET application. That model, it is nothing but your conceptual schema definition model, right? So this SSTL means your database. This CSTL, it's nothing but your classes, right? Classes methods of the corresponding database. Clear, guys?
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So these two things are fine, but how entity framework will come to know that this course is mapped with, right, this database table, right? So how the entity framework will come to know these things, right? That means what? Now, if you are having the database information, and if you are having the class information, method information, right? Then we should need to define some mapping. Mapping means in the sense which database table is mapped with which class, and which property is mapped with which column, right? And those things we need to define, right? So if you are having a database table course, and if you are having a class course, then you should need to define the mapping between your CSDL content and the SSDL content. That means you need to provide the mapping between this C with this S, right? So between this SSDL document with this CSDL document, and this mapping is going to be provided by this section. CS mapping. C means conceptual and S means storage. Conceptual storage mapping. And in this case, there is nothing new, right? What exactly this is going to do? It is going to provide you the mapping information between the database table name with the model name and which column is mapped with what properties. So in this case, this is my database table name courses, right? And this is nothing but your course class, right? So, and in this case, the mapping is between the course ID. This is the property name, and this is the column name. So this is my standard table, right? In this case, this is the mapping, entity mapping. So you can give it any name, right? And this mapping, it is providing the name as courses. And this mapping is between your model course, right? Model means this is nothing but your class, class with the database table course, right? So in this case, this course represent your class, and this course represent your database, right? And the name, this name is nothing but your course class name property, and this column name is nothing but your course database table column name, right? So this mapping information you need to provide. Clear how this mapping is being done,
Yes.
right? So here, this is nothing but your class name, this is nothing but your database table name, this is nothing but your this class property, and this is nothing but your the column name of this database table. So now this scalar property course ID is mapped with the course ID column name. Similarly, you can see this is my standard table, right? This is my standard table, this is my standard class, and the mapping information is there, and rest for all of the sets, right? So student course, right? So then you can see the function import, right? Function import means this is the function name, and this function sp delete student, it is pointing, right? This is the storage procedure name. This storage procedure name, it's pointing to this one, right? So this is your sp delete student, which you can find, and this is your storage procedure name, right? Clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? So, and in this case, you can see the result mapping complex type. So this is your complex type. So this complex type is created, and this complex type is having these properties. And this complex type is used when you are using this storage procedure. Clear? So these are the three sections that you understood. And apart from this runtime, right, there is a designer content. So designer content means, so how your designer looks like, right? So this section is nothing but representing this one, right? So this section is nothing but representing this one. So this is your designer view, and that designer view is going to be represented by the last designer section. Clear? Right? You can drag, right? You can change the position, right? You can wherever, whatever you want, you can do, right? So you can change these things, you can put that and put it here, right? As per your convenient, you can also redesign these things, right? And once you redesign and once you save, again, the XML view of this EDMX model is going to be updated. Clear?
Yes.
right? So this is your entity data model, right? So, right? And in this case, we have understand three different components. One is entity type. It represents the database table or model classes. Association type means it represents the foreign keys of a table and the navigational properties, right? If you are working with the storage schema model, then entity type pointing to database table, association type points to foreign keys, and property pointing to column names. And if you are working with schema model, then entity type representing your model classes, association type representing your navigational property, and this property is pointing to your property names. Clear? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Clear.
So that's it for today. And again, we are going to discuss few more interesting things, right? So like model browser, DbContext, DbSet, relationship between entities, right? So these are the things that you need to understand, and then we will go and we'll do the actual CRUD operations, right? But even from DbContext, I will show you the examples. I will start example from DbContext, but again, this model browser, it is going to be a theoretical class like this one, right? Because in this case also, right? So this is not that difficult, right? Okay, let me complete that also today. It will not take more time, right? So we have discussed the three things today. We have discussed that entity data model is consist of primarily three things. One is CSTL document, one is SSTL document, and another is MSN, right? So you can represent those things by using the XML view, right? So you can go with open with, and you can click on this XML editor and click on the OK button. So the XML representation is going to be shown. So, and this XML representation is actually little difficult to understand. So what we generally as a developer are interested is, we are interested in the visual representation, right? So if you want to see the visual representation of these things, then just click on the model browser option, right? There is an option called model browser. Once you open this model browser option, then you will see three sections are there, right? What are the three sections? One is diagram, one is DB model, another one is DB store. This diagram is nothing but this one. So whatever visibility, whatever you are showing in this section, this is nothing but your diagram. And you can see in this EDM designer view, you are only seeing, right? You are only viewing the database tables and the views, right? So you can see this is standard student, right? These are nothing but your database table and the corresponding view. But what about the storage procedure function and other things? Other things you cannot view here. And if you want to view other things, right, then you need to go with the model browser option. Click on this model browser, and this model browser will show you all these things, right? So in this case, this diagram, whatever you are viewing, this is the diagram. And apart from this diagram, two more nodes are there. The second node, the third. The second node represent the schema definition layer. It's a storage schema definition layer. And the third node is representing the database. You can see this is the database symbol, right? This is the class symbol. This is the diagram symbol. So this third model node is representing the database, right? So we have understand this diagram. It is nothing but diagram. You can modify, you can create more diagram right here, right? And then this is the model. So in this model, as we know, entity type is going to be, suppose entity type. Entity type means, okay, before starting this in data model, let's start with this database, right? In database, you have something called tables and views. We have something called storage and procedure and function. We have something called constant, right? Let's open this table and views, right? How many tables are there you include as part of your DDMX file, or while creating the entity framework, how many tables you have included, how many views you have included, all these things you can find here. Course, standard, student, student address, these are the 6 tables and 1 view. And once you expand this, you can see the respective properties which are there inside this course table, the respective column names, right? What are there inside the standard table, and the respective column names, right? What is you are returning from this view. right? This is nothing but your table and views and storage procedure. How many storage procedure you have included or functions you have included, those things are going to be displayed here, right? And you can see this is the student ID input parameter. This is the taking 3 parameter, it is taking 4 parameter. This is nothing but your storage procedure, right? And then constant means how many foreign keys you have defined, right? What in XML representation, you have something called association, right? That association things is going to be represented as part of your constant, right? So you can see these are the constant which we have created in our database, right? So these are the constant. Right? This is nothing but your database representation of inside the ADMX designer view. And this is nothing but your data, this is nothing but your model, or you can say schema representation, that is the classes or methods what entity framework created for you. All these things are going to be represented inside this node. Entity types, entity type means for each database table and views, one class is going to be created. One class is for course, one class is for standard, and in this case you can see these are the 3 properties and these are the navigation property. These are the 3 property, these are the navigation property, right? So you can see this is nothing but your classes, right? And complex type, as I mentioned, right? Whenever your storage procedure or function returns some table of data result set, that will be created as a complex type. And that complex type is actually a class. And this class actually going to contain the columns, right? Or the property, what your storage procedure is going to return. So there is a complex type. Now, enum we have not created. Enum is basically some kind of a key value pairs, right? Suppose you are creating one gender column, and that gender database table. That gender database table having only 3 columns, 2 columns. One is a gender ID and a name. And if such kind of things are there in your database, and then those things are going to be represented as enums, right? And association means we discussed this is nothing but your keys, right? So you can see 1-to-1, and this is student course. This is many-to-many key, right? So these are nothing but your foreign keys. Function input means whatever storage procedure you have, those storage procedures.
Sorry. Where does it show? Sorry, where does it show that it's many-to-many or one-to-one? I didn't see that.
So in this case, we have created some many-to-many constraint, right? So if you go to this example, so in this case, student course, right? So in this case, we are making.
Okay, but in the model, where does it show that it is one-to-one or many-to-many? In the model, in the browser model.
In the model.
There in the model browser, how can you see that it's one-to-one or many-to-many?
In this case, so you can see there is a star to star, star and star. This is student.
In the right side, you have the associations, right?
Right.
In the right side, there. Does it say there that it's one-to-one or many-to-many? There, it says that or not? I'm asking.
So in this case, in the model browser, it is just going to give you the names, right? Nothing else, right? And if you actually want to see that key is there, right? So you can see in this representation star. Star means there is a student and a course. So there is many-to-many relationship, and this is many-to-many relationship, which is represented here. And these are nothing but your foreign key, which is representing one-to-many relationship or one-to-one relationship, right? So in this case, it is just printing or it is just showing you the name of the foreign keys, right? So if you go to your database, right? So if you expand these things, right? If you expand this thing, this is nothing but your foreign key. So FK course teacher, right? So if you go to a student course, right? Right. So this is nothing but your student key, right? Constant, there is no constant, right? That is key. So these are nothing but your names, right? So these are nothing but your name, and those names are going to be represented here, right? Association. And this student course means it is representing the relationship, right? So there is many-to-many relationship which is represented here. So if you want to check what exactly this is represented, so if you expand these things little high, so you can see there is a star and star. So star means that is many-to-many relationship, and this is nothing but your name, right? From this name, you cannot identify anything, right? If you want to identify whether this is one-to-one or one-to-many, right? You have to come here. Star star means this is many-to-many. So 0 to 1 means there is from this standard table to student table, there is one-to-many, and from this standard table to this student, there is there is one-to-one relationship, right? 0 1 means 1 to 1, and whenever you are saying star means it is a many-to-many relationship. Clear? Right? So
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Right. So basically that is represented. Star means that is many, and here star means from student to course or course to student. This is many-to-many relationship, right? And here you can say 1 and 1. 1 and 1 means what? Now from student there is one-to-one relationship with the student address table. From student address table, it is also saying one-to-one relationship with the student table, right? And this teacher and course, right? Right, this teacher and course, right? From course table, you can see a particular course can be taken by a single teacher. From course to student, it is one-to-one relationship. You can see 1 0 1, so one-to-one relation. But from teacher to course, you can see this relationship is represented by star. That means a particular teacher can take multiple courses, right? And similarly, coming to this section, there is from student to teacher, this is a star. Star means it is many relationship, one-to-many relationship. One standard can be taken by multiple teacher. And from teacher to standard, this is one-to-one relationship. A particular teacher having only a single standard. Clear? So based on this, I mean 0 1, 0 1 means it's a one-to-one relationship, and star means it is many relationship. Whenever you are saying both are star, this is many-to-many relationship. When you are saying 1 star and 1 0 1, that means from one side it is one-to-many, from other side it is one-to-one relationship. And this is nothing but your name of the constraint, name of the foreign keys, what you have defined inside your I mean inside your database model, right? Right. So see, in this case, you will not find any code. Code is written in the database. What it is just giving you the name. This is nothing but your foreign key name, right?
Okay, thank you.
Right. So this is your database model, and here you can see each storage procedure is represented by a 1 method, right? So I have already shown you where this method are going to be created, right? But here you can see one thing. So what is here? You can see one thing. We have the database model and we have the database, right? We have the model and we have the database. But where is the mapping? Mapping you cannot find inside this model browser. If you want to see the mapping, where what exactly the mapping, this teacher table, this is the teacher table. This teacher table is mapped with which database table, right? This teacher class is mapped with which database table. This teacher ID property is mapped with which database column. This first name property is mapped with which database column, right? If you want to see the mapping, then what you need to do, right click on that model and select table mapping. Once you click on this model and select table mapping, then it will see that this table is mapped to teacher, right? This teacher model is mapped to the table teacher, and in this case, the teacher ID property is mapped to teacher ID. The teacher ID column is mapped to teacher. So this left hand side, right, it is showing the information of the database table, and this right hand side it is showing the information of the class, right? So here you can say column belongs to database or column belongs to class. Column belongs to database. So you can see this is the database side, and value or property belongs to your, what you can say, property belongs to this one, right? And here you can see this is the function, right? So what are the function? That function uses this one, right? So you can represent this, right? So here last name, it is the column which is mapped to the last name property of your model class, right? So if you want, you can change this one. Instead of last one, you want to change this one first one. And inside the first one, you want to change this to last one. That is fine. So now in your class, you are representing the last name property, first name property value. But while you are mapping, the last name will be mapped to the first name of the database, and the first name will be mapped to the last name inside your inside your class property. The changes you can also do this. Clear, guys?
Yes.
So one
Next.
doubt.
Yes.
Uh, like whatever this is DB first approach, and whatever the DB is going to create first, and we're going to just generate the our model classes and all our .NET code, is it? So
Right.
once the database, if at all the requirement comes that we are going to delete some databases or modify some schemas in database, then
That's
how
fine. That's fine. You just need to update the EDMX file,
so like
right?
it's like just building the DMX file, or do we need to come manually and need to
No,
update?
no, do not you do not need to do anything manually. Just right click, just update model from the database. And once you update this, right, just go to the refresh. What you want to refresh tables, right? So which table you want to refresh, or all the table you want to refresh. Just click on this finish button, right? But yes, if those tables are going to be right, if you are deleting one database, right? If you are deleting one table, then from your model, that corresponding class is going to be deleted, right? And if you are deleting that class, and if you are using that class somewhere in your application, then those things you need to be taken care. If you are deleting means you have to delete. If you delete the table means you need to delete the class. If you are deleting the class means if that class is used somewhere, then you have to modify those things. Clear?
Okay, so in that case, we can manually modify in our .NET code.
Obviously,
.NET.
obviously, you have to do this. See, this entity framework role is to generate the model classes, right? Based on your database table, it is going to generate the model classes. And if you are deleting that model classes means that from this section, the model class is going to be deleted, right? For example, do one thing, right? So we have created one view, right? So view student course, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete that view. Okay. So where is the view? This is my student view. I'm going to delete that view, right? So once I delete that view, now I want to update my EDMX model, right? Currently, if you go and watch, this view is there, right? And if I'm using that view student course, right? So let me create view student course OBJ. I'm creating this view student course, right? So I'm using this view student course and I'm creating an instance, right? Currently it is working. Now you deleted that view in the database and you want to update your model, right? Then what you need to do, right click, update model from database, and you just go and update the view, finish, right? So that's delete. And here you can see entity type view is not mapped, right? So let me set this one. Right. So once you save these things, right, then what you need to do, you can see that view is still there. Now I have not saved, I think, previously while updating the model. So save this. What is happening? Why it is not deleting that model? Oh, sorry. You have to come to this delete and you have to click on this view and click on this finish button. So add means if anything new is added, right? And view means refresh means if something is changed, and delete means if something is deleted, right? So once you delete this one, just save this one. Right? And then just run this TT file. So still it is not deleting. Why? It's not mapped. View student course is not mapped. Okay, so if this is not working, I don't know why it is not working. You simply click on this and delete from model, right? So once you click on this and delete from model, right? Then save this one. Right? And once you save this one, and you can see that view is also removed from your this section, right? Yes or no?
Yes, like and vice versa is also possible in this case, or it is not?
Yes, yes. Right now the view is deleted. Right now, let me create the view once more. I have created the view, and in that case, you do not that view. If you want to add, again right click on this update model, and here you can see that a newly added view will be shown, and just click on the finish button, right? And once
Okay,
you
I
click
mean,
on
like,
finish
want
button,
to create.
sorry.
Sorry. If you want to create any model class in .NET and want to reflect that in database, will it be possible in this case?
That is what we are going to discuss now. Code first approach.
Okay.
So in the case of a database first approach means based on the database, you have to create the models, right? So, and once you can see, once I have saved, that view is again added into this section, right? Clear?
Yes. Thank
Any question from anyone else?
No.
Clear, guys?
Yes.
Okay. So tomorrow again we are going to continue our discussion. A few important concept, right? So basically, what is my motto is you should know if you are using, right? If you are using something, then you should know how it is generated, why it is generated, right? What is the use of this TT file, right? All these things, how the connection string is generated, what are the different part of the connection, right? I know people, right? Few of my experienced developer, those are 10 years of experience, they are also working with me. They do not know what is this CSTL, what is this SSTL, right? What is this MSL? They do not know these things, right? So you have to know all these things, right? They do not know that we can represent this model in different way. We are having XML representation, right? We are having visual representation. They do not know all these things. But if you are learning something, means you have to learn everything, right? And here you have the context class. In the context class, you have to know all these things. Why I'm passing this parameter to the parent class constructor? I'm not yet discussing this thing. I will discuss this thing in detail. What is on model creating, right? What is the use of a DB set, right? What are these things, right? You know, you have to know what is DB set. We'll discuss DB set separately. What is exactly the use of a DB set? What is the use of a DbContext class, right? Again, we'll discuss this DbContext class. What are the role and responsibility, right? and what are the properties, what is database configuration tracker, change tracker, right? Everything we are going to discuss. What is the step changes method, right? This is the method which is going to be used frequently. What is the use of this method? What is the use of this entry, right? Everything we are going to discuss one by one, right? So once we discuss those things, right, this DbContext, right, then I will show you one example, right? I just give you a basic introduction between the relationship. I'll show you what is the relationship, what are the relationship, and then from chapter 7, mostly we'll cover these three things tomorrow, and then we'll start actual application development, right? So we'll start CRUD operation, right? Coring, right? Eager loading, lazy loading, explicit loading, right? Disconnected. So this is not completed. Many things I have prepared the document till this one, but apart from this, many things are there that what we need to understand, and I'm going to explain everything in detail, right? How you can execute asynchronous queries, right? How you can perform bulk insert update, right? How you can use some extensions to perform this bulk insert update and delete things, kind of things, right? So everything we are going to discuss, and once we cover the database first approach, then we will move forward and we'll understand the code first approach. And learning code first approach will not be that difficult if you understand this database first approach, right? Only difference is that creating the model classes and database table, but writing the code and understanding the code is going to be same, right? That's it for today. Any question from anyone?
No.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Right?